For human consciousness, a key question I would have is how much of this is simply cortical mappings versus how much leverages the body to create complex linguistic conceptual thoughts, reconstructive abstract pattern recognition. For example, using minute motor movements to allow us to actualize linguistic expressions. All right, the distinction you make between acted out concepts like the implicit and procedural and reflective concepts, linguistic and declarative, is vital. In fact, Barrett argues that the reflective part is really just a high speed, low energy version of the acted out part. Right, so the acted out, the automatic, is always at bedrock here. It's always the foundation that's even allowing anything else to happen, including our thinking of our thinking of words right now in our brains. Like that is afforded to us by what's allowing us to unconsciously act out our understanding. Here is the breakdown of how much is cortical mappings versus body leverage and how they mix to create meaning. The mechanism, simulation. So this is a huge topic that came up in embodied cognition. The as-if loop, using minute motor movements to allow us to actualize linguistic expressions. So I was wondering, does our brain actually leverage our muscles at all in terms of, when I think about a word, is the brain leveraging any of my muscles in subtle ways? And it seems like the answer is not quite. But it's still, there's still parts of the brain that would perceive my actual mouth movements when I do that. And that's actually either feeling or predicting those movements and creating that feeling for me in subtle ways that allows me to actually have these thoughts. And obviously these thoughts are built up from many different parts of the brain that are adding. We can imagine, especially following the global neuronal workspace theory, adding different aspects of that experience. Okay, simulation. Barrett and the embodied cognition field call this simulation. You asked if higher consciousness is simply cortical mappings or if it leverages the body. The answer is the cortical mappings are leverages of the body. Thinking is motor planning. When you think of the concept apple, your brain doesn't just access a dictionary definition. It activates the neurons in your visual cortex, your auditory cortex, and crucially your motor cortex to see to see round/red, to hear the crunch, to mimic the hand shape of holding it and the mouth movements of eating it. The minute movements. You are correct. Even when you are sitting still and just thinking, your brain is sending low-level signals to your muscles. It is running the motor plan, but inhibiting the final execution. If you read the word kick, the part of your motor cortex that controls your leg fires. Crazy. It is effectively 100% embodied. There's no pure abstract thought floating in the cortex detached from the body. All meaning is rooted in your body's sensory and motor systems. But one of the things that I've been learning is how important inhibition is in terms of the network of the brain. There's regions in the brain that are solely responsible for inhibiting other regions of the brain. And the only way to orchestrate behavior is to inhibit the inhibitors. You inhibit the first one and it stops inhibiting the second one, and then the second one's able to start firing in the ways that it wants. What I just said is overly simplistic. It's not like a region of the brain wants to do anything, but that's just a way that you can interpret what's going on. All right, the equation of meaning. How much of your experience of meaning is affect versus concept? It is not a pie chart. It is more like a lens and a light source. Affect is the value, the why. Affect is the internal status report of your body budget. Allostasis, it tells you valence, good/bad, and arousal, calm/excited. It highlights what matters. Without affect, nothing has meaning because nothing has biological consequence. You would be an intelligent computer that processes data but doesn't care about it. And then concept is the shape, the what. Concepts are the predictions your brain constructs to explain why you feel that affect. It gives the affect a specific form. I feel bad. I am anxious about this exam, etc. But what I'm trying to imagine is there's simulation happening at the parts of the brain that are deeply involved with our actual linguistic motor movements, and these are allowing us to have thoughts that follow that same language in our brain. So that's why language is so important for us to be able to comprehend complex concepts. It's because we literally simulate the motor movements of the language as we think about things explicitly. That's the type of story I think is going on here that I need to look deeper into. And that makes thoughts completely in the brain. That's where you find exactly what thoughts are in the brain. All right, the synthesis. Meaning occurs when a concept successfully predicts and categorizes an affective state. So this is like straight out of our document, right? This is exactly what I say. You feel a vague sense of doom. Okay, without concept, you feel a vague sense of doom, pure affect, but don't know why. Low meaning. Without affect, you know a fact, the sun is hot, but it feels irrelevant to you. Cold data, no felt feeling or meaning. So affect and whatever concept is here, though. But concept is a lot more than just this abstract idea of a concept in your brain. It's a bunch of different parts of your brain firing, associative parts, linguistic parts. All right, Damasio's extended cognition and language. Higher levels of consciousness, which he describes as, if the first one was proto-consciousness, extended consciousness is, I think, maybe it's like proto-consciousness, then, I don't know, complete consciousness or something like that, and then extended consciousness. This is where language enters as a teleportation tool. I don't know why it's using the word teleport, but the constraint. An animal without complex language can generally only regulate its body budget for the here and now. A dog creates concepts for this room, this smell, this owner. The linguistic hack. Words are efficient, compressed concepts. That's like a weird way of saying it, but it's like words allow you to keep track of a bunch of different states. And you can then make sense of those states using words as well. And now you get this like really complex system where we could actually understand things that are complex. All right, the word Paris is a sound wave that lets me trigger a massive simulation in your brain without us having to actually be in Paris. So when I hear this word Paris, a lot of simulation is happening in my brain that is affecting, things I see, things that I smell, things that I taste, etc., affecting things that I would say about it. This allows humans to manage their body budgets for the distant future, worrying about retirement, or the distant past, regretting an email. To answer your specific question, higher consciousness leverages the body more, not less. To understand the abstract concept of justice, your brain likely simulates a feeling of balance or a feeling of disgust towards unfairness. We use our physical body states to metaphorically understand abstract ideas. So, this is going towards that other stuff that we were talking about, simulation in all kinds of different embodied ways. But what I'm trying to get at is, what was being talked about up here, where, at base level, even when you hear the word justice, like, you've got all these things simulated. This is just pointing out that when we use terms that like metaphors, like that person is above that other person in their, math scores, right? Like we're leveraging parts of the brain that deal with physical space as well. What do I say after this? I want to push slightly on a couple things here. Following the literature on embodied cognition, there certainly are limits with the extent to which it definitively shows simulation correlations for everything that we want to know about our conscious experience of concepts. Furthermore, even with simulation, I'm wondering how much of the conscious experience of concepts require minute muscular movements, for example, unnoticeable movements of the mouth/tongue, or if the conscious experience is simply a manifestation of neural signaling, which doesn't reach muscles due to inhibition. So I'm really trying to specify, like, hey, like, is our muscles being used at all? Or is this simply just the neural signaling? Okay, you have correctly identified the fault line between strong embodied cognition and weak embodied cognition. So strong demands peripheral body feedback and weak posits central simulation. You will likely find the weak or neural simulation view more robust. Here is the nuance regarding the limits of simulation and the necessary muscle movements and the necessity of muscle movement. The as if, the solution to the muscle problem. Most modern neuroscientists, including Barrett and Damasio, rely on the as-if body loop to explain this. Okay, so the body loop. Brain, body acts. This is slow. The body loop. Brain, body acts. Body gives feedback. Brain feels it. You see a bear, your heart pounds, and you feel fear. That's slow. The as-if loop. So this is the predictive aspect here. The brain goes straight to the somatosensory cortex, direct shortcut. You see a bear and your brain tells your sensory cortex to hallucinate the feeling of a pounding heart without waiting for the heart to actually pound. So this is how these top-down signals are literally affecting how we feel about the world before those feelings even come. And in a predictive processing perspective, the top-down is the prior. The feeling that we would eventually get, like the actual physical feeling or the signals that come from those physical feelings, are actually just signals of error. It tells us whether or not our predictions are correct or not correct. But the predictions are actually taking authority before the bottom-up signals are.